People always say lies have a strange way of echoing louder in elegant rooms, but no one expected Daniel's lie to echo across crystal chandeliers and silk dresses. It began as a whisper, slipped casually from his mouth like it belonged there. "My wife will be joining me soon." The people around him nodded politely, smiling as though they believed every polished syllable. But the woman standing next to him, the one holding his arm like she had earned it, was not his wife. She was Vanessa. The mistress he introduced proudly, carelessly, with a confidence that suggested he thought life would never dare challenge him. The gala shimmered around them, alive with soft jazz and the clinking of expensive glasses. Men in tailored suits laughed too loudly, women in glittering gowns floated like moving constellations, and in the center of it all was Daniel, pretending his world was perfect. He adjusted his cufflinks, leaned toward Vanessa, and whispered, "Stay close to me tonight." She smiled, lips glossed, eyes sparkling with ambition. "I always do," she murmured, her voice like a rehearsed promise. They made a handsome pair from a distance. People admired them, even envied them. Vanessa soaked in the attention, her fingers interlocking with his as though she owned the right to his hand. She tilted her head toward him and said, "You think they know? About us?" Daniel shook his head with a half-smirk. "They know what I tell them." But beneath the confidence, a flicker of unease lived in the corner of his eye. It came and disappeared so quickly that Vanessa didn't notice, but he felt it. A tiny flame of dread burning quietly in his chest. Because the truth had a way of showing up when least expected. Across town, Elena stood alone in front of her bedroom mirror, trying to steady her breathing. She wasn't the type to attend galas. She preferred warm kitchens, soft blankets, laughter at home, and the quiet safety of a life she believed was built on love. But tonight, something felt different. Something pushed her toward a truth she didn't want to face, but needed to understand. She stared at her reflection, gentle eyes, tired but still hopeful. She picked up the deep blue gown Daniel had once called the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. She held it against her, remembering the night he gifted it to her, his forehead pressed against hers as he whispered, "You're my forever." Forever had been feeling shorter lately. She slipped into the gown slowly, almost ceremonially, as though stepping into armor she hadn't known she needed. Each movement carried a weight, the tightening of the zipper, the brushing of her hair, the soft touch of makeup on her cheeks. She wasn't dressing up for him anymore. She was dressing up for the truth. As she put on her necklace, the one he had clasped around her neck years ago, her hands trembled. Not with fear. With clarity. She deserved answers. She deserved honesty. And she deserved to be seen. Tonight, she would no longer shrink herself to fit into Daniel's fading love. Meanwhile, at the gala, Daniel tried to bury the uneasiness that kept pinching his ribs. He kissed Vanessa's hand lightly, a gesture that burned with guilt even if he pretended it didn't. "You're tense," she teased, swaying closer. "Just work," he lied. But his eyes drifted toward the entrance again, unconsciously, repeatedly, as though expecting a shadow from his past to appear at any moment. Vanessa followed his gaze and laughed. "Relax. She's not coming." Daniel swallowed. "She usually doesn't. But tonight?" Vanessa smirked, brushing imaginary lint from his jacket. "Tonight she won't ruin what we have." His jaw tightened. Not because of her words, but because deep down, a part of him feared exactly that. Outside, Elena stepped out of the car, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The air was cold, but it wasn't the chill that made her heart pound, it was the unknown waiting behind the golden doors of the ballroom. She took a slow breath, then walked inside. The lights hit her instantly, illuminating her like someone had placed a spotlight on her existence. Conversations rippled around the room, bouncing off marble floors, but she didn't hear any of them. Her eyes were locked on the sea of unfamiliar faces, searching for one his. The room smelled of perfume, wealth, and secrets. Elena felt as though she had stepped into a world that wasn't hers anymore, if it ever had been. She moved gracefully, though her heart felt heavy, like it carried every suspicion she had ignored. Daniel didn't notice her at first. He was too busy letting Vanessa curl around his arm, too busy laughing at jokes he didn't find funny, too busy pretending. But other people noticed. Whispers started at the far corner of the room. "Who is she? She's stunning. I've never seen her before." eyes followed her, drawn to her quiet elegance. She didn't flaunt herself, she simply existed with a presence so real that it made the glitter around her seem artificial. Then the ripple reached Daniel. He paused mid-sentence. Something made him turn. Something invisible, instinctive, like a silent pull of conscience. His gaze landed on her. And his entire world collapsed into a single, devastating heartbeat. His hand slipped from Vanessa's without him realizing it. His breath hitched. His skin turned pale. He felt like a man suddenly staring at the consequences he never expected to face. Vanessa followed his gaze, confused. Her smile faded as soon as she saw the woman in the blue gown walking toward them with quiet, devastating grace. "Who is that?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because the truth was standing right there, more beautiful than he remembered, more powerful than his lies, more real than the fantasy he had wrapped himself in. Elena didn't speed up. She didn't slow down. Her steps were steady, each one a chapter closing behind her. The room grew still as people stepped aside, watching her like a queen reclaiming her throne. Vanessa's voice trembled. "Daniel, why are you looking at her like that?" He felt his throat tighten around words he wasn't ready to speak. "Elena," he whispered. But she wasn't close enough to hear. Not yet. The room fell silent, and the mistress holding his arm finally realized. The real wife had arrived. And her presence alone was enough to silence an entire room. Silence had weight, and in that glittering ballroom, it crashed down heavier than the chandeliers themselves. The band froze mid-note, waiters halted with trays in mid-air, and every pair of eyes locked onto the blue-gown woman who walked toward Daniel with a calmness that felt almost supernatural. People say anger is loud, but heartbreak, real heartbreak, is always quiet. And Elena carried that quietness like a storm wrapped in silk. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. He wanted to speak, to invent some explanation, to erase the last 10 seconds from reality. But the truth was marching toward him, step by devastating step. Vanessa's voice cracked first. "Daniel, who is she?" He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. His mouth opened, then closed again, like he was choking on the lies he used to swallow so easily. Elena stopped in front of them. Not trembling. Not sobbing. Just standing, steady, dignified, heartbreak shining in her eyes like glass reflecting the light. The room held its breath. "Daniel," she said softly. Just his name. Yet it struck him harder than any scream ever could. Her tone wasn't cold, it was warm in the saddest possible way, as if she still cared enough to speak gently, even while breaking inside. Vanessa blinked rapidly, her confidence draining like color from a painting left in the sun. "What is happening?" "Daniel," she demanded in a trembling whisper. Daniel dragged his gaze from Elena to Vanessa, his lips parting, but no words came. So Elena answered for him. "I'm his wife." Gasps scattered through the room like shattering glass. A man beside them coughed violently. Someone whispered, "His wife?" Someone else muttered, "Then who is she?" Vanessa stumbled back a step, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. "You said she was gone," she hissed at Daniel. "You said she moved out, you said." Elena didn't even look at her. Her eyes stayed on Daniel, searching him, not for excuses, but for honesty. Something he hadn't given her in months. "Why?" she whispered. The word was almost weightless, but it hit like a blow. Daniel's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "Elena, please. Let's not do this here." "Here," she repeated, her voice breaking just a touch. "You brought her here and called her your wife." A ripple of shame passed through the crowd. Daniel's face burned. It wasn't like that." Vanessa snapped, "Then what was it, Daniel?" "Because it sure looked like that." Elena breathed slowly, painfully, as though steadying herself against a wave she had no choice but to stand through. "You could have told me," she said. "You could have at least given me the dignity of the truth." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. I was going to. I just needed time." She shook her head, a sad, fragile smile forming. "Time to replace me?" Vanessa sucked in a sharp breath. "You said she didn't care."
You said she wasn't part of your life anymore. You said.
Stop, Daniel snapped, but the word only hung in the air, powerless. Elena looked at Vanessa, finally, and there was no hatred in her eyes, only exhaustion.
Deep, bone-level exhaustion. I don't blame you, she murmured. You believed what he told you.
The simplicity of her words hit harder than anger could have. Vanessa's lips parted as if she wanted to argue, defend herself, justify everything, but nothing came out.
Not one syllable.
Daniel reached out, desperate, but Elena stepped back, and the small distance between them widened into something permanent. Elena, please, he whispered, his voice cracking.
You don't understand. I understand perfectly, she said. You lied. To her. To me. And to yourself. People exchanged looks, shame coloring their faces. Not for themselves, but for him. Daniel tried one more time. Let's go somewhere private. Talk. I can fix this. Her eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. You can't fix something you chose to break. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't dramatic. But it was final. A few guests lowered their gazes, unable to watch. A woman in a silver gown wiped her eyes. Even Vanessa looked shaken, not because she felt betrayed by Elena, but because she realized she had built her feelings on a bed of lies. Daniel's boss, Mr. Weller, approached awkwardly. Mrs. Hayes. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Elena offered him a polite nod. I know. Her grace made Daniel feel smaller. Please, he begged, don't leave. We can fix this, Elena. We can talk. She looked at him like she was seeing a stranger wearing her husband's face. Daniel, the moment you called another woman your wife, the conversation ended. His heart clenched violently. I made a mistake. No, she whispered. Mistakes happen once. What you did was a choice. The truth in her words silenced him. The band still hadn't resumed playing. The waiters still hadn't moved. The entire gala was suspended in her quiet power. Elena reached into her clutch, her fingers trembling only slightly. She pulled out her wedding ring. The ring he had slipped onto her finger on a sunny afternoon, promising forever. She held it out between them. Daniel stared at it, his breath coming in sharp, broken pulls. Don't, he whispered, shaking his head. Elena, please. She closed his hand gently around the ring. I hope, she said softly, one day you become the man you pretend to be. Tears pooled in Daniel's eyes, but he blinked them back, pride wrestling with regret. I love you, he whispered desperately. Her voice cracked barely, but it did. If you loved me, you would have protected me. The simplicity of the sentence tore him apart. Vanessa turned away, covering her mouth, tears gathering in her eyes, not for him, but for the woman who stood before him with more strength than anyone expected. Elena stepped back. Then another step. And another. People moved aside quietly, respectfully, creating a path for her as though she were royalty leaving the throne she no longer wanted. Every step she took echoed through the marble floor. Daniel tried to follow. Elena, wait. She turned just once, her eyes holding all the shattered pieces of the life they once shared. No, she whispered. You already made me wait too long. Then she walked out. The doors opened for her like they knew she deserved nothing less. The moment they closed behind her, the room finally breathed again, but Daniel couldn't. He stood frozen, the ring burning in his fist, the weight of his choices pressing into his chest. Vanessa wiped her tears shakily. You told me she was nothing, she whispered, voice painfully small. Daniel closed his hand tighter around the ring, his voice breaking. She was everything. But she was gone. And the echo of her footsteps was louder than the jazz, the gossip, and the lies that had filled that room.